Guys, Jay Hoyt here. Before this video gets started, I just want to say thank you guys for all the support on the last couple of videos. I wanted to try something a little bit new, and you guys have definitely showed the love, so thank you guys for that. But we're returning to NHL 21 Online Versus to talk about the trade deadline. What's going on, guys? Jay Hoyt back with you today. Welcome back to NHL 21. We got some online verses in the background, and we're talking about the trade deadline. And of course, we're using one team that's going to be no stranger to the trade talks, the Buffalo Sabres. A little bit of a spotty connection at the start of this game, but it does kind of clear up towards the end. But we compiled a very small list of some players that may or may not get moved towards the trade deadline. For me, it is 10 days away, but for you guys are seeing it the day after I recorded, so technically it's 9 days now for the trade deadline. And we've already had one, I don't want to say huge move, but Eric Staal did get traded for a couple of draft picks. And I think our first option in this trade bait board, or this smaller condensed board, could be a similar return. That player is Anaheim Ducks captain Ryan Getzlaf. Now, on the, I think it was TSN board that I read and was looking at some of these players and getting some ideas for what players I kind of wanted to talk about, he wasn't actually on there, which was kind of weird because he is 35 years old. He obviously is a center. He's a pending UFA, and he's making $8.25 million this year. And he's the, I guess, middle of the road, I guess, performance-wise. 35 games played, 3 goals, 12 assists, 15 total points. Now, obviously, he hasn't, I mean, he's won, but he has, like, I want another chance at a chip, right? 35 years old. I mean, look at what Corey Perry did. He was over to, Dallas? Now he's in, Montreal or something, trying to chase a cup. And could Getzlaf do the same thing? Because, Anaheim is not in a good position this year. They are 8th place in the Western Division. And yeah, they're not going to be making the playoffs this year unless some crazy stuff happens. So if I was Ryan Getzlaf, I know obviously you've been there forever. You're the captain of the team. I don't want to say you're the face of the franchise, but they're probably looking to go in a different direction, and could be, is this the time that they go in a different direction and try to get something back for him? Will he want to resign? Does he want to be moved? I don't know. Like I said, he's not on that trade bait board, so possibly not, probably not, because there's been no talks about him. But just as a potential option, if you look what Eric Staal went for, he went for a 3rd round pick and a 5th round pick. I think probably Getzlaf could get about the same, maybe a hair more, but as a old declining center that's probably going to be on your 2nd or 3rd line, most likely 3rd line on a good team now. He's declining. Will he be traded? Probably not, but it would be interesting to see what his return would be. But now on to our biggest, and I'm really surprised it's not the number 1 on the trade board. That's going to be forward Taylor Hall. Now, I swear, every time this guy is either has an expiring contract or he's on a crappy team, I always feel like he's in trade talks. So let's go over what he's doing this year. So obviously he's a left wing. He's 29 years old, pending UFA this year. $8 million contract, like I said, expiring. And then this year, obviously he's playing in Buffalo, so not the greatest of situations over there. They just broke their, 18 game or 17 game, whatever it was, losing streak, beating, Philadelphia. So, there's that, but still not a good situation. Still, they could get, I don't want to say a lot for him, but they could definitely get some good return for a player that probably won't re-sign with them, just given the outlook towards this team. But in 35 games played this year, he has 2 goals, 16 assists, and 18 points. which, you know, isn't great. I mean, a lot of players underperforming in Buffalo. They, fire their coach, bring in an interim coach, and, you know, they broke the losing streak, so I guess that's a thing. But Buffalo, 8th in the East, so obviously same situation as there. Anaheim, not the greatest. So what do we think about a return? So when he left New Jersey, they got, what was it, Nick Merkley and two basically prospects, Schnarr and Ball, and then they get, I think a first and a third in that deal. But that was him coming, or that was 2 years removed or 1 year removed from that 90-point season, which overall hasn't really done too much for New Jersey yet. Ball, Merkley, and who's on my forgetting? Schnarr have been kind of bouncing around. A couple games in the NHL, a couple games back down in their AHL team. I think their first round pick was Dawson Mercer, I think, which they're pretty excited about. And I think their third round pick was, who was it? Was it Nicholas Dawes? I don't remember offhand. But they got a pretty good return. A couple of draft picks, 3 prospects in the deal. But after I don't want to say a struggling season, but after a season in Buffalo here, what could they possibly get? Now, on my list here, I have a first round pick, a good prospect, and maybe a roster player, potentially another pick. Now, obviously, we all know Taylor Hall can be a star player, but he's not going to be a star player in Buffalo. I'd love to see him regroup with Edmonton somehow, recreate that team, put him on a line with McDavid or even Nugent Hopkins or Draisaitl, and they'd have a pretty darn good top 6. And then once they figure out their goaltender situation, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I think they'd be really good. But potential landing spots, I mean, there's a ton that are looking for scoring wingers that could be, looking for Hall's services. And like I said, first round pick, maybe a good prospect at least, then maybe a roster player just to kind of balance out, depending on what rosters are, and then maybe like a third or something as far as a pick goes. Kind of similar to what New Jersey gave up for him, or I should say what New Jersey got for him. And I don't see Hall staying in Buffalo, and if he does, I'd be very, very surprised. And the one player that's at number 1 on the trade board, and I don't really understand why, David Savard out of the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's a right defenseman, 30 years old, pending UFA this year, got a $4.25 million contract. But after looking at his stats and what he's done for Columbus over the years, he had a couple of good 30-point seasons. He was kind of around 20 points. But he's kind of just went downhill. So this year, only 6 points in 37 games. Now, obviously, he's playing behind Werenski. He's playing behind Jones. And he's rocking down, the second line. So most likely he's playing in a different role other than a two-way, more offensive guy. But any team could be a resurgence for him that is struggling on the right-handed side, especially. He probably could step up, put up some decent numbers for the new team. But Columbus not sitting in the greatest of spots, 6th overall place in the Central Division. And like I said, 6 points, 37 games, minus 15 overall. And what's going to be a return for him? Well, on my board here, on my list here, I have a second and a prospect. And that's only because I don't really see him as a super valuable game-changing player like a Hall. So I don't think a first-round pick, maybe if it's going to be a later pick, which most likely any playoff team is going to be. So maybe throw a first in there. Probably maybe a defensive prospect. I don't really see too much going for him. I could be totally off on this, though. A lot of people have him as number 1 on the trade bait board. But especially with the expansion draft coming up, they might end up losing him. So now's the time to get rid of any players that you think you're going to have to expose and then potentially lose for nothing. And maybe you haven't had any luck trying to make a side trade to stay for Seattle to stay away from him. But David Savard, second a prospect, maybe first in a prospect. Just given what he does on the ice, maybe he's more defensive minded now. Not exactly sure, but where could he go? I mean, Florida's a possible option. They just lost Ekblad for this season, so that might be a decent option for them. But other than that, there's a lot of teams that could use a right-hand defenseman right now, and David Savard might be at the top of that list. And we have an either-or here for, what is this player? I guess it's number 4 overall on the day. That's also going to be from Columbus. We're staying in there after Savard, and this one is a or option, and probably is no surprise. And this one is going to be the goaltenders, Elvis Merzlikins and Jonas Korpisalo. Could they have 2 more difficulty sounding names, or difficulty to pronounce names, I should say? But both relatively young goaltenders, 26 years old apiece. They both have 1 more year on each of their contracts. Merzlikins has 1 more year at $4 million, and Korpisalo has 1 more year at $2.8. Both goalies not doing great or good at all this year. Merzlikins 6-6-2 with a 2.75 goals against, with a 917 save percentage. Korpisalo not much better, 8-10-6. So it seems to be getting more of the games played there, with the goals against of 3.02 and a save percentage the same exact as Merzlikins with 917. So, and after double checking my facts here, I'm totally wrong, which I am not afraid to admit. So actually, Elvis Merzlikins is actually exempt from the draft, which means they technically could keep both of them. But that's not to say that one of them may not be traded. Now, obviously, if I would assume Edmonton would probably be one of the teams kicking tires on both these guys, regardless of the expansion draft situation, especially given that they're both young and both ready to take on a bigger role. But they were supposed to be this really good tandem, but they're both kind of underperforming. And for a Columbus team that has definitely brought out some big surprises, these guys haven't done too much this year. So I know they've obviously lost a lot of their key players. We see one of them being moved over to Edmonton or any other team that needs goaltender help, but I could also see them staying put. But definitely I would keep an eye out on Columbus come trade deadline. Even if they choose to trade one of them, what would be a potential return on a on a goalie that could be a starter or a good tandem, or potentially going over to a team and being a starter? Trying to think. I don't think a first would be in order. Maybe like a second and a third. Maybe like a first and a third. But I don't think a crazy lot would be involved with this. But definitely a team to look out for, the Columbus Blue Jackets. And on to our last player of this video is a really interesting pick, and that is going to be Tony DeAngelo from the New York Rangers. Now, why would you put a really good right-handed defenseman that's 25 years old on this list? Well, he's been out of the lineup, and there was definitely a incident that happened with his team. I don't know exactly what happened, but something happened with the team. They put him on waivers. They tried to do whatever they could with him, but he has not played in a Ranger uniform since that incident. So this year, 6 games played, only 1 assist on the year. So not much to show for this year, obviously, since he hasn't been playing at all. But we could always take a look at what he did last year. That's going to be his best career year, right? Coming off of a 68 games played, 15 goals, 38 assists, and 52 total points. Now, if you can do that, you're probably looked at as a big part of your team. Well, that incident happened, and well, they kind of disposed of him, put him on the sidelines, and they're just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with him. But let's go over him. So he's a right-hand defenseman. He's 25 years old. He's got 1 more year at $3.675 million and is an RFA when that does expire. Like I said, coming off of a great year, but this year had that incident and hasn't really played too much since then, if any at all. So what could be a return for him? Well, you could probably get a pretty good return. Probably a first round pick, maybe a second, maybe a third, maybe a good prospect, maybe a pair of prospects. But there's been no interest in him. And that's kind of really surprising given, his talents. Obviously, if he's, his attitude and his personality or something makes him unattractive towards other teams, or just what the case is, looking at it just from a pure on-ice perspective, I could definitely see him getting picked up. But of course, as we've seen with some people, attitudes get in the way, and then their career doesn't really go too much of anywhere. So, most likely I would assume that the Rangers would just buy him out, or try to just, I don't want to say give him away, but give him away for a discount this offseason, or maybe at the trade deadline. But we'll have to wait and see, because obviously can't really judge anything off this year's performance. Just have to give a potential return from what he probably could do and what his potential is. So, crappy situation out of there in New York. But Tony DeAngelo could be a good fit for any team looking for a right-hand defenseman. I'm not going to go in too much into these last two players, but some other notable names that are on the top of the trade bait board. Kyle Palmieri from New Jersey and Nick Foligno from also Columbus. Well, Palmieri, I could definitely see New Jersey re-signing. A big goal scorer for them, big guy in the locker room, top guy for them. I could definitely see them re-signing him. Unless he wants out, then I could definitely see them trading him, obviously. But unless they don't re-sign him, then I don't know what they're doing, because obviously he's a big piece over there in New Jersey. But potential return for him, probably a first, third, maybe a prospect, would probably be the range of that, maybe off by a little bit. But then Nick Foligno, second, third line. What does he even play anymore? I've literally lost track. But we'll just say forward, older. I think his contract's expiring this year. And most likely whatever team he goes to next or next year, he'll have a semi-reduced role, be in that probably middle six, and probably a reduced contract. And he's going to get to that point in the year where he's going to be a good depth player that could move up and down the lineup. But you know what? They probably could get rid of him for maybe like I would say definitely less than a Palmieri, probably like a maybe second and a third, maybe second and a prospect, second, third and a prospect. I don't know what his return is on the market, but we got lots of big names to look forward to this trade deadline season. But let me know that down in the comment sections. Did I miss any big players, or what would you think of the players that I mentioned? We got Getzlaf, Hall, David Savard, Elvis Merzlikins, Jonas Corposello, Tony DeAngelo, Kyle Palmieri, Nick Foligno. What do you guys think? Are those guys going to get traded? If so, to what team? And what's going to be their return, or a rough return, since obviously you're probably not going to get it exactly right. With all that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, hit that like button down below. Let me know of your thoughts and comments on this trade deadline down below in that comment section. And as always, guys, if you are brand new here, or if you just haven't yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button down there as well. Turn on those notifications so you never miss an upload. And as always, guys, see you in the next one.